KHAMZAT Chimaev has been making a name in the UFC world. He was even dubbed the second coming of former two-division UFC champion Conor McGregor, according to Jared Cannonier. Some of you might already know his name or probably even saw him fight, but how much do you know about KHAMZAT Chimaev? Here are 10 things you don't know about KHAMZAT Chimaev. Number 10. His nickname is Boars. Despite the fact that we all know KHAMZAT by his given name Chimaev, most of you are probably unaware of KHAMZAT Greatet's real name. He competed under this nickname for the majority of his early years. Given his fame as a young wrestler and later as a national champion in Sweden, many of his wrestling contemporaries would have recognized him by his name, Boars. KHAMZAT Chimaev's moniker literally means wolf in Chechen. The national animal of Chimaev's motherland, Chechnya, is a violent and territorial beast. Being given this nickname not only expresses his nation's affection for him, but it also expresses his wrath in the ring. His nickname is clearly not a ruse. Boars has the mindset of a ferocious wolf in the octagon. Number 9. There isn't any time to waste. Many combat sports athletes begin training in their chosen martial arts after they reach a certain level of maturity, with many notable MMA stars joining a gym as early as their preteen years. KHAMZAT, on the other hand, began wrestling training at the age of 5. In his native Chechnya, he joined a youth wrestling program that would eventually lead to a life of combat. KHAMZAT has devoted himself to fighting for the better part of his life, and as we all know, his achievements have been well documented. Number 8. Multi-divisional achievement. You're probably aware that KHAMZAT has competed in the UFC at both 170 and 185 pounds. However, you may not be aware that his pre-MMA career was also littered with multi-divisional victories. Boars not only competed at his natural weight and in freestyle wrestling, but he also won national championships at weights as high as 202 pounds or 92 kilograms. Number 7. A fantastic background. Anyone who has spent even a minute watching KHAMZAT fight will quickly conclude that he has a strong wrestling background. KHAMZAT won national wrestling championships in 2 different divisions in 2016, 2017, and 2018. He eventually established himself as one of the top wrestlers in the country. It's only natural that after a career on the mats, he's now regarded as one of the most offensively destructive wrestlers in mixed martial arts. KHAMZAT was 23-0 as a freestyle wrestler in Sweden prior to his crossover, with a recent victory over UFC middleweight and fellow Swede Jack Hermansson bringing his record to 24-0. That victory, like most of his others, was overwhelmingly overpowering, as he won the vote by an 8-0 margin. Hermansson, who is far from small middleweight, was helpless in the face of KHAMZAT's highly efficient traditional method. He was unable to mount much of his own offense. Number 6. An early test. It's tempting to imagine KHAMZAT had a very easy path to the UFC in his early career, but during his time fighting in Brave CD, he clearly battled a pretty tough level of competition, all things considered. During that time, he happened to run upon another extremely promising possibility, Ikram Aliskerov, a Sambo world champion who appears destined to be another major addition to the next generation of Dagestani talent to break into the top flight. And that fight, albeit brief, may have put him to the test when his takedowns didn't work at first. Aliskerov is a talented wrestler in his own right, and when he thwarted KHAMZAT's attempts, Boars had no choice but to improvise. Thankfully, Chimaev's incredible knockout power was put to good use when an uppercut knocked out his opponent cold. Ikram has gone 3-0 since then, indicating that he is still a fighter to watch, and for KHAMZAT, this is still one of his more underappreciated successes. Number 5. The Holiday. KHAMZAT's attempt to enter the country of Ireland in 2018 is one of the most remarkable stories from recent MMA history. To track down and beat up on Conor McGregor for remarks he made leading up to his major fight with KHABIB Nurmagomedov. McGregor, who managed to enrage millions during that bout's violent pre-fight news conference, appeared to enrage Chimaev, who was an amateur MMA fighter at the time. KHAMZAT was led to his cell shortly after arriving in Dublin and was first processed through security. He claims he was left there for 8 or 9 hours before being instructed to return to Sweden. Whether or not it's real, it's still a very funny piece of storytelling from the welterweight contender. Imagine what would have happened if he had bumped into Conor and a gang of his associates in Ireland's capital. It's probably best not to speculate about how that may have turned out. Number 4. Debut on a short notice. We've all heard about KHAMZAT's 3 UFC debut fights and how he set records for both the fastest turnaround in UFC history and the fastest 3-fight victory streak in the promotion's history. Many people forget that KHAMZAT came in with only 7 days notice to make his UFC debut against John Phillips. Dusko Todorovic was injured, so he was replaced and he answered the phone when it rang. Furthermore, prior to this, KHAMZAT had mostly fought at 170 pounds in MMA, and daring CF, I dipped twice into the 185-pound pool. As a result, when it came time to fight, he flew to Abu Dhabi with little time to prepare before facing the powerful Welshman in a higher weight class, under the most extensive promotion in the history of the planet. Sure, everything that came after his victory for Rhys McKee, Gerald Meerschaert, and most recently Li Jingliang was spectacular in and of itself. In our opinion, the tale behind the risks that come with KHAMZAT's last-minute debut was just as interesting. Number 3. A great rating. KHAMZAT has been training in Sweden's all-star training center since making the switch to mixed martial arts, a place where he sparred with the likes of David Taylor, Ilir Latifi, and most importantly, 3-time UFC light heavyweight title challenger Alexander Gustafsson on a regular basis. Gus has undoubtedly fought with some of the best fighters in history, including John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Fabricio Werdum, and Glover Teixeira, to name a few. The press questioned Muller about his outstanding gym partner, declaring KHAMZAT one of the greatest fighters he had ever worked with back in 2019, before KHAMZAT was even close to making his UFC debut. And when you consider Alexander's abundance of expertise, it's a fairly strong compliment, don't you agree? Though he can be aggressive to those who oppose him, KHAMZAT is a great training partner and a humble, industrious presence in the gym, according to all sources. It makes sense when you consider the success and improvements over time, right? Number 2. His source of inspiration. KHAMZAT went on to make very public threats against Conor McGregor, another UFC fighter. The majority of you aren't aware of Conor's indirect influence on KHAMZAT's MMA career. As odd as it may sound, KHAMZAT claims that McGregor's knockout of Jose Aldo in 2015 encouraged him to start training in mixed martial arts. However, before you assume KHAMZAT is a fan, keep in mind that it was more of a "if that person can do it, why can't I" mentality. Thought process is more important than everything else. Despite the fact that KHAMZAT was clearly not a fan of the Irishman, it came as a surprise to his supporters that his exposure to the man he would later make very public threats against influenced his decision to pursue a career in mixed martial arts. Would it be feasible for Jose Aldo to have never made the moves that brought him to the UFC if he had won? Perhaps, perhaps not. Overall, the link between KHAMZAT's boxing career and the polarizing superstar that is Conor McGregor is a strange one. It's strange how it works. Number 1. King of performance bonuses. Finally, we'll look at a fascinating statistic that you're unlikely to see elsewhere. Despite the fact that KHAMZAT has only fought 4 times under the UFC banner, he has earned 4 Performance of the Night bonuses. It makes sense, given the fact that he has easily dispatched each of his opponents. What's astonishing is that KHAMZAT has already earned more post-fight bonuses than some of the game's most well-known characters. Dustin Poirier, Aljamain Sterling, and even Alexander Volkanovski are all champions. When you consider that, especially in light of his relatively brief UFC history, it provides a pretty vivid image of just how impressive he has been thus far. We all know about his incredible strike differential, where he lands hundreds of strikes on 4 opponents while only absorbing 2. But with $200,000 in his back pocket from bonuses alone, he's certainly on his way to superstardom. It's clear to say that this one is a one-of-a-kind talent, and with him getting closer to championship contention, we can expect to see him continue to set UFC records in the not-too-distant future. That's a wrap for today's video. Now that you know these facts about KHAMZAT Chimaev, what are your thoughts about him? Let us know in the comment section below. We hope you guys liked the video. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.